When you hear the name Martin Luther King Jr., it's easy to think of the icon, the monument, the national holiday. But behind all of that was a real person, a man whose powerful ideas were forged in the fire of a deeply segregated America. So today, we're going to try to understand the man behind the legend and why his message is still so incredibly important.
I mean, what words, right? Some of the most powerful ever spoken in the 20th century. But here's the thing you have to ask yourself. Where did that dream come from? It didn't just appear out of nowhere on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. No, it was built, piece by painful piece from the real-life experiences of a boy growing up in the Jim Crow South.
So to really get the leader, we have to start with the young man. His story begins in a world that was, literally defined by black and white, but also in a home where he learned all about dignity and defiance right from the start.
So, first off, he was actually born Michael King Jr. The name change itself was a huge deal. His father renamed them both in honor of the Protestant reformer Martin Luther. Talk about a statement of purpose, right? And get this, the man was a prodigy. He started college at just 15 years old and was a pastor by 25. You could just tell he was on a fast track to leadership from the very beginning.
You want to know where he got his courage? Look no further than this moment in a shoe store. This wasn't just his dad being defiant. It was a lesson in self-respect. His father just flat out refused to be humiliated, teaching his young son that you don't have to play by the rules of an unfair system. A seed was definitely planted that day. And if his father's actions planted the seed, this moment lit the fire. Imagine this. You're a teenager. You've just won a speech contest about justice, of all things, and on the way home you're forced to stand for a 90-mile bus ride just so white people can sit. He said it was the angriest he'd ever been. That personal burning rage is what he would later learn to channel into this incredible, disciplined force for change. So you've got all this righteous anger. What do you do with it? It could have so easily turned to violence, but King went down a different road. Now, he didn't invent nonviolent resistance, but boy did he perfect it for the American struggle, creating this moral powerhouse that would challenge the very conscience of the country. Okay, it is absolutely crucial to understand this. Nonviolence is not passive. It's not about just taking it. It's an active, very strategic, and deeply moral plan. The whole idea, inspired by Gandhi, wasn't to crush your enemy. It was to awaken their own sense of what's right and wrong. It's a strategy built on the powerful idea that showing the world your unearned suffering can expose just how brutal an unfair system really is. 385 days. Just let that number sink in for a second. That is more than a year. That's how long the black community in Montgomery, Alabama walked, carpooled, and did whatever it took to boycott the city buses after Rosa Parks was arrested. This was the ultimate test of their discipline and endurance, and with a young Dr. King leading the way, it proved to the world that nonviolence could work on a massive scale. So in 1963, King gets thrown in jail in Birmingham for protesting. And what does he do? He writes one of the most important documents of the entire civil rights movement. People were telling him, just wait, be patient. And from that jail cell, he writes back, explaining that for people who aren't suffering, wait is easy to say. But for those who are, wait almost always means never. This idea right here, this was the fuel that kept the movement going. It's a statement of incredible faith. When you're facing down attack dogs and fire hoses on the marches from Selma to Montgomery, you have to believe in something like this. You have to believe that no matter how bad things look right now, history, the universe itself, is on your side. Okay, so we've got the strategy and the philosophy, but did it actually work? I mean, did it make a real difference? Let's take a look at the incredible, concrete victories that literally changed the laws of the United States. And here they are. Boom, boom, and boom. The Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, the Fair Housing Act. These weren't just symbolic wins, okay? These were monumental changes to American law that tore down the legal structures of segregation. This is what all that struggle, all that marching, all that sacrifice was for. And this, of course, was the moment that put it all on the national stage, the March on Washington. We're talking more than 250,000 people, black and white, showing up to demand change. And it was right there that Dr. King delivered his I Have a Dream speech and just blasted the movement's message into every living room in America. But here's the thing. If you only know the dream speech, you're really only getting part of the story. Because as the years went on, King's message got deeper.
He started connecting the dots between racism and all the other major problems plaguing American society.
Yeah, see, in his later years, his thinking just exploded. He realized that getting the right to sit at a lunch counter doesn't mean a whole lot if you can't actually afford to buy a hamburger. He started talking about what he called the giant triplets: racism, extreme poverty, and war. He saw them as all tangled up together.
Now this is a much more radical king than many people remember. He wasn't just asking for a seat at the table anymore. He was starting to question the very structure of the house itself. He was calling for a revolution of values, a complete shift in America's priorities away from things and toward people. That's some pretty radical stuff. And his vision went global. He took that philosophy of nonviolence and applied it to the whole world. He was a fierce opponent of the Vietnam War, arguing that any nation that spends more money on weapons than on programs of social uplift is on a path to spiritual death. So after all that, why does this matter to us right now? Well, it's pretty simple. Because while the laws have changed, those giant triplets that King was talking about, racism, poverty, and war, are still very, very much with us. Maybe the biggest lesson he left us with is that the fight for a better world is never really over. It's not a one-and-done kind of deal. It takes constant work, smart strategies, and a faith that change is actually possible. His life is really a challenge to all of us, to look at the problems of our own time and ask ourselves, so what am I doing to help bend that arc toward justice? And finally, there's this. From his last speech ever, the night before he was assassinated. It's just haunting to listen to. He knew he was in danger. He knew he might not make it to the end of the journey. But even then, he was filled with this incredible, unshakable hope for the future. It's a message that tells us the road is long and hard, but that destination, a world of peace and justice, it isn't just a dream. It's a promise.